preference are? You
Oh.
prefer big?
Oh, walk and talk.
So you
I
do
love
walk and
it.
talk.
I love it. This is great. Okay, my name is Sharon Ferraro. I'm from Kalamazoo, Michigan, where I am the Historic Preservation Coordinator for my hometown of 75,000 people. We have 5 historic districts with 2,070 historic resources, everything from schools and churches down to carriage barns, and in our historic districts. And when I went to get my preservation degree, I said I want to come back to Kalamazoo and make preservation a tool in my city. And I'm very proud of the fact that our last 2 master plans have integrated historic preservation into every facet of the plan as opposed to being an appendix in the back. So, and that's pretty much the way we roll there. It's worked for us really, really well. So what I'm here today to talk about is windows. You know, actually I'm going to move down here so I don't have to keep turning back and looking at the screen, as long as I'm not blocking the screen for anybody. Am I blocking the screen for anybody? Okay, good. Oh, and a chair, too. Oh, I like other people my age who have probably the same problem with their knees that recognize the fact that I still love this, but I need some accommodations occasionally. Okay, there, good? Excellent, excellent, okay. So this way I can see the screen without turning. I will occasionally need to point at things anyway, but this works really well for me. So, I want to talk about windows, about historic windows. How many of you actually are actively involved in design review in your historic districts? Okay, staff and commissioners, right? Both? Okay, so as we know, windows are one of the biggest things because of the way that they are marketed. One of the most common requests we get from owners in historic districts: I want to replace my windows, I'm losing too much money on energy, whatever their complaint is. And so we're going to kind of go through that here today. So this is the heartfelt, warm and fuzzy part. Don't change the windows. They're the souls, they're the eyes of the building. They're beautiful. Yeah, we know that. Okay, they add character, they add beauty. They tell us, literally, they tell us about the age of the building by the design of the window and the materials that were used. So they're also information points for us. So I'm not going to go on and show you lots of pictures of beautiful windows, although I do have lots of pictures of beautiful windows in my collection at home. We're just going to cut right to the chase because I'm not going to preach to the choir. You people understand this already. If I was talking to a bunch of people at a home expo, I probably would be talking about how beautiful the windows are and why we should save them, and first growth lumber and all that kind of stuff, but you already know that. So we're just going to go right to, and I really like this one quote that I may be preaching to the choir, but the choir needs a good song. So we're going to learn that song today. Okay, first of all, these are the parts of a window. I'm going to let you study this for about 15 seconds, and then we're going to go on. Just the 3 parts, though, that you do want to remember are the sash. The sash are the movable parts of a window. In a double hung window, the parts that move up and down. Ideally, both the upper and lower sashes should move up and down. In a casement window, it's hinged on the side. In an awning or hopper window, it's hinged on either the top or the bottom. But the sash is the frame that holds the glass, or the pieces of glass, or the hundreds of pieces of glass, or whatever it is. The jamb is the frame that the sash sit in. And then the meeting rail, in the case of a double hung window, is where the upper and lower sash meet. That's where the lock is. Okay, so those are the 3 things you need to remember. The rest of it, you know, eventually you'll get it, but you don't need to know it all right away. These are the 3 things that I find to be the most common issues that come up for owners in historic districts. When they come to your commission and they say, this is what we want to do, these are what they're most often talking about. They say, the energy is costing me, I'm losing a lot of money because of energy waste in my windows. When I'm sitting in my favorite chair, I feel a cold breeze behind me if I'm near the window. The windows are loose, there are drafts. Okay, fine, that's one complaint. And they think that new windows will solve this. The second is operation. The windows just don't work. They won't stay open. I have to have a stick to prop them open. The ropes they're hard to open and close. They stick a lot. Okay, fine. And the third is, and this is the one that they bring in when they give you the big puppy dog eyes, and they just get really, really soft. and there's lead in the windows. And if my grandchildren come to visit me, they will be struck dead when they walk in the door. Say, okay, well, no. We're gonna give you some realistic talking points to work with. We've got about 90 minutes. I will be happy to take questions from the audience, but if the topic is covered later on, then we'll just say, hold that thought. I do want to get done in 90 minutes because the next stage of my visit is 6 days in my favorite B&B in the UP. So, let's get going on this. Okay, this is an official U.S. Department of Energy pie chart showing where you have your heat loss in a house. Notice windows are 10%. So if you have heat loss in your house, you can address all of these other things. First, you lose more heat through a fireplace than you do through your windows, okay? You can buy a balloon that goes into your flue that when you're not using it, that expands and blocks it. It'll cost you $50, it will pay for itself within a year. And that is going to save you more energy than replacing all the windows in your house. So there's obviously many, many, many other things that you can do to save energy. Windows should be close to, if not the last thing on that list. Okay, so I do want to address that. At the end of this, I have my email address that you can use to contact me. I can put this in a Dropbox for if you want the whole thing, but it's a 25 meg PowerPoint presentation. I can turn it down into a PDF that I should be able to get attached to an email. And these wonderful folks at Minnesota Historical Society will be putting it on their YouTube channel, this whole presentation. So you'll be able to watch it and enjoy it again. Share it with your commission, whatever you want to do. But this is really important. The Department of Energy, they're the ones, I mean, that's their job, energy. They're the ones who energy rate everything from, refrigerators to whole house fans to air conditioning units. They're the ones who do this. I know that at least in Michigan, and I believe nationwide, when they give grants out to county health departments for weatherization, you can't use the grants for windows except in extraordinary cases because the payback is not high enough. You can use it for a furnace, you can use it for other repairs on the house, but you can't use a weatherization grant to replace windows. Storm windows, yes. To replace windows, not usually. So this says a lot. If they're not willing to give away the great handfuls of money that the federal government seems to be throwing at everything to replace windows, then it seems that, maybe it's not really going to give most folks the advantage that they think it is. So what they say is that weather stripping, caulking, and the installation of a storm window greatly reduce air infiltration, while replacing the windows, the original window, and installing a replacement will have a minimal positive effect. This is official quote from the Department of Energy website. Okay? So when the replacement window companies say, we got a DOE rating of blah, 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 yeah, well, but their basic advice is don't do it. And then if you do, this is what it has. Okay, now this is from Old House Journal magazine. If you don't subscribe, you should. And Gordon Bach did not pay me to say that, but it is my favorite magazine in the world. But this is a wonderful graphic they did about 3 years ago when they did an article on windows. And what I love is that at the bottom it talks, what is the payback? To put storm windows on, which will save you probably half of your energy loss that you're getting in your windows, you can get rid of with storm windows. The payback is 4.5 years. That's how quick the energy savings will mount up and actually pay you back for your investment in those new storm windows. Replacing with double pane thermal windows that replaces a single pane window, the payback is 40.5 years. Replacing with a low E double glass thermal replacement window for a single pane window, the payback is 34 years. And if you really want to go top of the line, low E glass, double pane thermal replacement, all those wonderful things, it would be 240 years. And the warranty is 20 years. Okay, so seriously, the numbers just don't add up. So let's just take this is a typical house. This is from the historic district in my neighborhood in Kalamazoo. The annual heating, cooling costs, not what's attributable to the water heater and the the stove and any other gas or electric appliances they might have, but just the heating and cooling costs average about $200 a month, so $2,400 for the year. Okay, so we know windows only account for 10% of that. I'm going to figure it about 10 and 15%. Maybe there are some really drafty windows there. Okay, so that means that the 10% of that cost is $240. That means $240 out of the entire year's heating expenses can be attributed to the windows. Okay, now the average replacement window, low-end vinyl might cost you about $125, $150, maybe $200. And then they tell you there's a lead paint hazard replacement fee that they add on to every single window of whatever size of $125. So your average replacement window is going to cost you $500. So it's 2 years to pay for each window. 2 years to pay for each window. 20 windows. That means it's going to be, there's your 40-year payback. That's how long it's going to take to actually save enough energy and money to pay back for the cost of the windows. And the average warranty is 12 to 15 years, 20 when you get to the real high-end windows. Okay, so this is just do the math. Just take that 10% figure, how many windows do you have, what's your average heating cost, 10%, this is what it's going to cost. You can translate this formula into something that maybe your homeowner can understand. And say, this isn't going to save you the kind of money you think it's going to save you. Okay? This is, so there's energy savings. And people say, when they're sitting next to a window, I feel a draft moving next to my window. Well, that's called convection. And even with a perfectly sealed, low-E glass window, you are going to get convection because convection is because warm air rises. And the window, the air in front of the window is cooler by its very nature because glass is not a solid material. So the warm air is going to rise, and the cool air is going to move, and it's going to feel like there's a draft. Even if that window was painted shut on both sides, you're still going to get a draft near that window. Okay? So, now this is a picture I took with, if you're really into this, there's this great little camera that you can put on top of your iPad or your iPhone called a FLIR. It's an infrared camera. And I took these pictures when I got mine on Christmas from my husband. And these are 2 windows in my house. Now I do have, as I mentioned yesterday, I have vinyl replacement windows in my house that are all failing, which may account somewhat for my animosity for vinyl windows. But so these are 2 windows that were put in at the same time, the same quality. The window on the left is it's vinyl, double glass. It has blinds in front of it, but they're in the full open mode, flat and parallel to the floor. It has no curtain, other than the one that you see pulled to the side there. But you can see how much energy just the curtain itself is keeping the room warmer, just where that curtain is, okay? The other picture is another room facing the same direction, same type of window. And the blinds are on and in exactly the same position. The only difference is that there are sheer curtains in front of the window. Not heavy curtains, not heavy thermal curtains, not warm, not light blocking curtains, just sheers. And you can see the difference in the warmth. Purple is cold, gold, orange is the warmer area. So just a pair of curtains for your windows that you close at night will probably save most people more money than by paying for a full replacement window. Just a set of curtains, and you don't, even the $6 blinds that you can get at Lowe's and Home Depot and Menards would probably save more energy if they have a storm than a replacement window would. So these are facts. So you can go ahead and replace it, but no, you can't. No, that's a word, keep that in your vocabulary. I once made a button for one of my historic district commissioners that just was not getting it, and it says no, and I made him pin it inside the lapel of his jacket. And say, okay, every so often if you forget, you know that you can use that word. It's okay, no. Okay, so the thing is then there are some gaps. You get old windows, the house has shifted a little bit, maybe maintenance hasn't been done right, a lot of different things. So the windows don't close as tightly as they used to. Well, the first thing is to make sure that the meeting rail, the lock on the meeting rail is locked, because that's not a security thing. That's to keep the cold air from passing in between. It's to lock the 2 parts of the window together to close the gaps. And first of all, if someone says they're losing air out of an upper sash that's painted shut, they do not know what they're talking about. because no air is going to get through that pane. If you can't open the window, you can't lose air around it, period, okay? So the windows are loose, okay, we understand that. You can add weather stripping. Now in this case, these photographs are from a window workshop we did for contractors, where we taught them how to take out windows, rehab them, put them back in again, and I'm going to talk more about that a little bit later. But you can, some very simple spring bronze weather stripping that you can add, and you can add it to your probably only operating lower sash without even removing the window sash from the frame, because it just goes in with little nails into the window sash, and it has two things that happen. The cold air is blocked from coming in, and it stops the rattling because it puts a very gentle tension on the window itself, so even when it's windy, you won't get the rattling anymore. You may still need to address your putty, but we're going to get to that later. So it's a really good product. It only lasts a century, maybe century and a quarter. So it's been around for a really long time. You can buy it in 100-foot rolls. It's nice stuff, and it's this pretty copper color, which, you know, you open that window and you see that copper, you know someone's got good weather stripping. Every time that air needs to make a 90-degree turn, it loses 90% of its velocity, okay? So if you have a window with a storm, even if it's not really well fitted, it's got to go through two 90-degree turns just to get to the space between the storm and the interior window. And then it's got to go through 3 more 90-degree turns to get all the way inside the house. Okay? The weather stripping stops that, but either way, it's not going to have that same velocity. If you have no window in the house at all, in the opening at all, you're going to lose a lot of energy. There was recently, I think about 3 years ago now, there was a case of the Interstate Commerce Commission that said that window manufacturers could no longer claim a 50% energy savings by replacing your windows. Because first of all, they weren't backing it up with any kind of data. Said if you're going to do this, you must back it up with data. And they weren't willing to do that because they couldn't. Unless there's nothing in the opening, you can't save that much. Look, this is the weather stripping. This is the spring bronze weather stripping. It's wonderful stuff. Like I said, it comes in a 100-foot roll. You do have to remember to buy the nails to go with it when you buy the big rolls like this, because it does come packaged up like in window size chunks with little nails with it, but otherwise you have to remember. But it doesn't cost that much. $10 a window is really high end. That would be for a big window. And if you're doing both the upper and lower sashes, really that roll, that 100-foot roll costs $100, less than $100. So you're talking about maybe 6 feet 8 feet maybe per window. So it's really not that much if you're doing both sashes. Not that expensive, easy to install.
Do you have a source for that?
Killian's Hardware. They're the best source online for the 100-foot rolls. They're absolutely wonderful people. Really good price, quick to ship. I can't remember whether it's 2 L's or 1. But if you go to look for Killian's Hardware and Spring Bronze, you'll go right there because they're one of the best sources. Okay, the other thing is people say, well, I don't want storm windows because they mar the beauty of my historic windows. I'd rather have, replacement windows. So they say they don't want storm windows, but storm windows have been shown that compared to an insulated glass unit with the bi-glass, the 2 layers of glass, that you actually get more energy efficiency on 1.5 to 2 inches between the primary window and the storm window. Bi-glass has at most a 1/4 inch gap, and all of the bi-glass seals will fail. Not may fail, will fail. The only ones that haven't failed are ones when they were making this bi-glass in the late 40s and the early 50s by essentially blowing a bottle that was the shape of the window. So there were no seals, it was just solid glass all the way around the edge. No one's doing that anymore. When my window restoration friends find some of those that are still intact, they just get real excited and send me pictures, you know. So all the bi-glass seals will fail, and the inert gas that's inside that you paid the extra for will leak out, not unusually in the first 3 or 4 years, and then it's all just in there, it's just room air. Every so often, the gas will leak out before the seals fail enough, and they will actually implode. And by implode, it's not like it's explode, it's implode. I mean, the glass will crack and break because there's no air pressure on the inside anymore. All the inert gas has gotten out. So they'll just crack, and then they have to be replaced. And so the storm window, putting storm windows on, even the combination storms, actually your payback is 4.5 years. So that's not a bad payback at all to put the storms on. So energy savings, not really all that great. This is something, I love this picture on the left. That is water between the 2 layers of the byglass. And one of the biggest home business opportunities that they're franchising all over the United States right now is a technique for getting into the fogged byglass windows and drying them out. So if there's a business to repair the byglass windows, it seems to me that there may be a flawed process there to begin with. So byglass just doesn't, it's okay and it'll be great for the first few years. The other thing is that around the edge of this byglass window, especially that one on the left, if you're actually testing this extensively to find out whether you're saving energy, if you put your thermocouple, your testing device in the center of the window, you'll find, yeah, you're saving a little bit of energy right there with that fogged byglass window filled with water, or before it was filled with water. But if you put it right next to the edge, you'll find that the energy savings don't begin until 1.5 to 2 inches from the edge of the window, which means that in that piece of glass you might have, well, maybe 1/2 inch wide by about 6 inches tall, where you're actually saving more energy by having byglass than you would having a piece of single glass in there. So it's how they test it as well. These were done, I love this. These were from a friend in Ontario. Okay, so pretty much the same, in fact, just about the same, as far north as we are here in Hastings. And the picture on the left is a restored 1920s wooden double hung window with a storm. And on the right is a modern replacement window that's single hung, but it does have the double glass. So you can see that the storm and the old window is performing much better than the double glass, byglass window. And it was done at 11 o'clock at night in October. Same windows, or same size windows, same building, same floor, same thermal cameras, same time, day and time at night, everything, and it was Ontario. So it was 37 degrees outside. So really, energy savings is not going to be there. We had a project in Kalamazoo where, for some reason, our vice mayor decided she wanted to get people in the low-income part of the city a lot of help with their energy bills. And so she talked to a vinyl window installing company, and they said, because someone had talked her into the fact that if you put insulation in an attic, it won't do any good if you don't also have vents. And she believed them. But, so she wanted to replace windows, and the window company was getting some good publicity out of it. They had a grant to pay for the windows, so it was cost to them, so it worked out really well. And then they started getting calls from the people whose windows had been replaced like a year and a half later. It's like, my energy bills haven't changed at all. Well, no, because there's not enough inherent energy savings in replacing windows to actually change anybody's energy bills. So one of the other things that's worthwhile to do, if we had a window workshop where we took 12 full-time contractors, they were working, and we presented a 2-week-long window rehabilitation workshop. They had to come to Kalamazoo, they had to stay for 2 weeks. They were literally camping on the floor of our workshop house. And they took out 2 weeks in the middle of summer. These were all active contractors. These were not people that did it on the side or hobbyist homeowners. And they came and they did this. So before we started the work on this house, we did a complete energy test on it. We did blower door and everything else. And there were places where maintenance had been behind on this house long enough that we pulled wallpaper off the walls when we started lowering the air pressure inside. It was amazing. But, so we had a complete energy test done before we started. And after we were done, without having done anything on the house except fix the windows and tighten up the storm windows a little bit, we had a 20% lower air infiltration throughout the house. There were still gaps everywhere else that needed to be caught, but we dropped the air infiltration by 20%. So if you took care of all the other gaps first, and then worked on your windows, you'd probably cut your air infiltration down by close to 90% without replacing the windows. And this shows after we were done, this is a little thing that generates smoke. if there was air infiltration coming in from the outside, that smoke would not be just kind of dropping slowly, it would be moving into the room. And as it is, you can see it's just sort of going downward. Okay, so those are the talking points about energy savings. Basically, the energy savings are minimal at best. So when your homeowners come and they say, I'm going to need to save a lot of energy, you say, you really go on down to JCPenney and get yourself some nice curtains and stop by Lowe's and get some new blinds, and you're going to save as much doing that as you would replacing your windows completely. So another question that often comes up is operation. My windows don't work. I can't open them. They're really hard to get open. I have to prop them open with a stick because the ropes are broken. Well, anyone can learn how to do your own window repair. And unless the windows are in really horrific shape, it's not that hard. We had the same grant program where we did our contractors workshops for 2 weeks each. We also had 2 homeowners programs that were 3 days long. We repaired all the windows on this wonderful old lodge that the city owns. And it just had a great time. A lot of homeowners, different, backgrounds. We had, absolutely faithful, dyed-in-the-wool preservationists, all the way up to one grumbly old guy that his wife brought along and said, by the time we were done, he wanted to start working on windows next door, and we said, we can't go to that house and start tearing them out, not without their permission. But he had a lot, and we had one other person that came, and she said, until I came to this workshop, my husband and I had already budgeted to replace 1 window a year for the next several years. She says, we're not going to do that. Now we're going to fix 2 windows a year. And then we'll be all done in half the time and spend a lot less money. So it's not hard to do. I'm just going to kind of walk through the basics of window rehab. There is a video available on YouTube, which we all, of course, use constantly, right? It's called Simple Steps to Working Windows. It's in 5 parts. It's on YouTube. If you just go to YouTube and you Google Simple Steps to Working Windows, you'll get all 5 parts. When we had these workshops in Kalamazoo, the grant covered making the video. And since it cost only about another $200 to get 2,500, as it did to the 500 we originally wanted, we just ordered a bunch of them, and we're finally coming close to running out. But we did put it on YouTube, and it's available there to anybody, anytime. So you can learn how to do your windows. First, we need to rehab windows, you take the sash out of the frame. You do that by prying off the stop that's on the inside, very gently. And the video shows you how to do it very nicely. You just take that sash out. Once you take that stop off, then the sash just lifts up and you can pull it right out. If there are no ropes, you can just take it right out. If it's suspended by the ropes will still be attached to the top, to the sides. So you can see these are the window parts. We're going to be taking the sashes out. You can see on, let me see, I'm not going to do this. Oh, there we go, cursor. Okay, this is the window, this is the sashes, the upper and the lower sashes. The weights hang from ropes on the pulleys inside the sash cavity on the inside. There's a door to get in there and take it out, and it's usually on the side. You can just take one screw out, you lift that out, and you've got access to that cavity. If you try to take the front casing off, the trim and the interior trim, it's not unusual that you'll find the plaster of the wall runs right up to the edge of the casing of the window behind the trim. So that will not necessarily give you access to this cavity where the sashes are. Okay, so first we're going to take the sash out. She's removed the interior step and she's taken out the lower sash. Getting the upper sash out is a little trickier because there's one piece of wood that runs up and down called parting bead. It's a little trickier to get that one out, especially because this is most likely the sash that has been painted shut for, half a century. So you may need to really get and work on that. That's a little bit more of a challenge, but if you say, look, I just want my windows to work, and the putty is still in good shape on the upper sash, why take it out? Just get the lower sash working. Hardly anybody uses the upper sash. There's really good reasons to use the upper sash, but you don't necessarily need to do that right away. And then once you get both sashes out, I recommend very, 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 very highly that you get a Sharpie and you mark the windows. Because although the windows may seem like they're all exactly the same size, they may be off, they may have been fiddled with a little bit when they were first installed by 1/8 of an inch here, 1/4 of an inch there, whatever. Mark it. mark the frame of the window. You can mark it on the inside, well, no one will ever see it with a number, and you mark the upper and lower one so that the windows go back into the right opening. If you're just doing one window at a time, you don't need to. But if you're doing a whole house, then you really need to match the windows. Because a too small window will fit in a larger opening, but a too large window will not fit in a small opening. And you will learn many curse words and probably break more glass. You may not learn them, but you probably will use more of them. One of the things that the video shows is it does show how to work lead safe. And I can't even tell you how important it is for everybody, and we're going to work on that in the third part of this. So you need to scrape or strip the paint. Usually what's making the windows not work is that when someone was painting, they said, oh, look, this is bare wood, I'll paint it. And so suddenly you have a 1/16 of an inch less moving space for that sash in the lower window, and then once it's been painted once, it starts looking grungy, and someone has to paint it again the next time, and then the edges of the, and so it's the paint really that's holding everything up. So you want to get that paint out of there. Not only is it holding the window from working properly, but it's probably where the lead paint is that could actually be causing problems. So there should be no paint in the sash track that the window moves up and down in. There should be no paint in there. You can put your weather stripping in there, great, it'll lubricate things. You can wax it if you want to, lots of other things, but there should not be paint in that strip, period. No matter what it looks like, don't do it if you expect the window to work. Okay, so this is how it goes together, the pulleys. This shows up going both ways. This is where you can see the pulley, the green arrow on the drawing, and in the window where the sashes are out. And then the sash pocket, that cavity that you're seeing right there, that's actually the cover of the sash pocket is off. So it's big enough for the window weight to fit in and out and for you to be able to get in, unless you have really big hands, to be able to actually get in there and fiddle with the rope. I'm not going into the intricacies of how to get the rope, which is kind of limp, over the pulley into where you need it to be, but it's in the video, and it's not that hard. There's a lot of different ways, but it's not that hard to do. The old putty that's there, putty is the material that holds the glass in place in the sash frame. It's made of linseed oil and other stuff, and the idea is this is what is a sacrificial material on a window. The glass expands and contracts at a different rate as the wood does, and the putty is the gasket. It never really gets completely dry until it starts failing, and that can easily be a quarter of a century. So many windows have reached the point where they need the putty to be replaced. Fine, so you get the old putty out. Not all of it will have fallen out. A lot of it, 90% of it might still be in place, and you have some significant cracks and gaps. It's better just to go all the way back to the beginning and start fresh. Fortunately, it comes out fairly easily with a heat gun. Now, if someone has gotten the brainstorm idea 25 years ago, when the putty should have been actually replaced and they've used caulk, I have no solutions. You have to usually work with a razor knife or a cutting knife and cut it out. It's about the only way to get that crap out. But, although I've known people to just take the window, turn it upside down over a trash can, shatter the glass, and then just rip the caulk out, figuring it's going to be a lot less time and bother to put new glass in than it is to try to get that caulk out, because it penetrates so much into the wood fiber that it's almost impossible to get out. But if you just have putty, you're good. You're good. So you can remove it with a heat gun, or you can use this wonderful device in the picture the gal on the right is using. It's called a speed heater. It's an infrared paint stripper, paint and heating device. It does not get the paint or the putty hot enough to release lead as a gas that you can then inhale. So it's a good device. They are not super cheap. It's about $600 for an entire set. That comes with the draw knives but you can also buy them used. A lot of people will buy them, strip their entire house, and then sell them on eBay. So, if you want to look for a brand name, this is probably the only time I'm going to say a brand name specifically, and it's for a safety reason. You want the speed heater. You do not want the silent paint remover. The silent paint remover is not UL approved. The speed heater is. And considering how much energy it draws, you want Underwriters Laboratory approved. So you get the putty out with a heat gun, or with the speed heater, or just with, I don't know, a dental pick, whatever you want to use. But you want to get the old putty out of there. Then you very carefully remove the glass. I can tell you right now that you will bring 1 to 5 to 1 in 10 pieces of glass that you handle. Even the pros, my brother used to do this professionally as a business, break about 1 in 10. So the idea is if you know you're going to be working on a house that has pretty much the same size windows, get a couple pieces in advance, because if you're doing it as a weekend warrior, you know, your glass shop is not going to be able to custom cut the glass you want on Sunday, and that's when you're going to break it. So get a couple of extra pieces in advance. And the worst case scenario, you'll have them in stock if you need them, you know, when your grandkids come over and throw a baseball through the window. So you will break the glass, so go ahead and buy some extra in advance. And then once you get the frame is cleaned out completely, you put a little bit of linseed oil, or some people will actually go paint the cavity that the glass sits in, and then you put a layer of putty around all the way around the edge before you put the glass in. This serves as a gasket. You set your glass in very carefully, and then you kind of level it as much as you can, and then you put in new putty, like the gentleman on the right is doing. It doesn't have to be super neat because you're going to dress it up with a putty knife after you get it in place, holding that stuff in place. You also are using what are called glazing points to hold the window while the putty sets up. And these can be used, they can be shot out of a little gun, or there's ones you can just push in with a screwdriver. It's not hard. This really is not rocket science. And if you watch the video a couple times, you'll probably want to go out and take a window off of, you know, one of somebody who's throwing out their windows. Grab a couple, go to the window replacement people and say, look, you're just throwing these away. Can I have a few just to practice on? Now, if they don't actually show you the door, they might say, sure, what the hell, take whatever you want. You can practice on them and make all the mistakes you want and kind of learn about it, but it's not that hard. So you install the putty, and then you have to trim the putty back. This is where it takes a little bit more skill, but so as I always tell people, whenever you start a project and you're learning to rehab on your own house, start at the back. Because that way, by the time you get around to the front, it's going to look nice, you know, and your significant other won't be quite as upset with you. Yeah?
Do you have a recommendation on putty?
I like Glazing. For easily available, my favorite is Glazing from UGL. It's usually not available in the big box stores. It is often available at Ace and True Value. And it's a good product. It's the difference is that what you can find is the DAP. You can find that everywhere. You DAP window putty is like everywhere. Okay, read the details. 3 weeks before you can paint it. And you need to paint it because the final layer of the seal is the putty. The final layer is the paint that goes a little bit onto the glass and then onto the wood. That's the final part of the seal on the window. So if you can't paint it for 3 weeks, you're just going to sit there and you know, binge watch Game of Thrones while you wait until you can go ahead and you know, paint your putty and put your windows back in. So now the nice thing about the Glazing is that you can paint that anywhere from 1 to 3 days. So it's a lot faster to finish up the process. So I like Glazing. There's also Sarco, which is, it's really an interesting company. It's one of those companies that's very old-fashioned and they've got a really good product, but they don't do anything except phone orders for people who have accounts. I mean, you can't order them online. That kind of thing. It's kind of funny. Yeah.
Safety and gloves. Looks like everybody works with bare hands. Is that because you get better handling?
Well, yeah, because it is. And there's a lot of things. And when I get into the lead, you'll see a little bit of the reasons why I'm less concerned about lead with adults than I am with kids. Because my assumption is you do not have children in this work area. Okay? I hate working with gloves, which is why I have thorns that rip open my hands on my rose bushes all the time. I hate wearing gloves for almost anything, except when it's really hazardous or really heavy. But yeah, some people decided we provided, at these workshops, we provided gloves and masks for everybody, and we only had one person that consistently wore them. So it's kind of your own personal taste, okay? Actually, gloves make this part of it much harder. Doing the putty on makes it a lot harder because you can't feel what you need to feel, and the glove shifts under you, and then the putty starts pulling away, and it's, again, you get to use your curse words. So now at this point, the sash is ready to install in the jam. You can see that white edge, that's where the putty is. So that's all ready to go right back in the jam at this point. Ideally, it would be painted before it went in, because this was a project where we knew the folks from the city were going to be coming back like a month later to paint all the woodwork. We didn't worry about painting the putty right away, because they were going to paint all the woodwork and they would take care of it for us then. But normally, so this, you normally wouldn't put it back in the jam at this point, but it is done. And do take a few minutes at this point and wash the glass. It'll be a lot easier to do it now than it will be when it's hung in place, So, and you do want to install new ropes. Even if you took ropes out that looked like they were still good, no, start with fresh ones. Always start with 2. Even if only 1 rope was broken, install both pieces of rope again. Please, please, please. Because you can, and getting the rope, because you tie it to the sash, or you need to tie it to the sash. It needs to be tied to the weight, which is a giant sausage-shaped piece of metal, of cast iron usually, and it needs to go over the pulley and be attached to the rope. So how do you do that? Usually people will make the knot and attach it to the window sash first, and then you've got to get this rope over the pulley. Well, getting it over the pulley is not hard at all, but if you try to get it to come down inside that window cavity, that's raw wood. They didn't finish it. It's got little splinters sticking out, and that rope will inevitably catch on something, and it won't come all the way down to where you think it should. So you say, okay, what do we need? We need weight of some kind on it. Okay, we need a weight on it so the rope will come down. What can we put through that little pulley hole, which is no bigger than your pinky finger? What can we put through that that's going to have some weight? Well, contractors that I work with have used a lot of different things. Some will take a chunk of sash chain that you can use instead of rope and just put a safety pin and pin it to the rope, and then that weight will pull it right down. You can also use 3 or 4 small lead fishing weights that you just, and then it comes down, and then once it gets down to where that opening is that you've opened up, the sash door, then you can take your weights off and attach it to the weight and with the knot, and you're ready to go. So it's not that hard. But, so there's several different techniques. Some guys just put duct tape, wrap duct tape around the bottom 2 or 3 inches so it doesn't snag as easily. It kind of depends on what works for you. But there's several ways to do it not that hard. So and then tying the rope to the weight. The rope needs to be just a little bit longer than the full height of the window. So if you go from the sill to the very top of the window and add about 1 inch, you're probably going to have the right length rope. This is a formula I've been looking for years. And one of the guys, if you want to follow a really good blog, the Craftsman blog out of Florida, Scott Seidler, S-I-D-L-E-R, really, really knows his stuff. He talks about all sorts of different issues, all sorts of different really good issues. But he was the one who said, there's this formula, by the way, it's like the height of the window. And when I think about it, yeah, it's got to be. So this is my brother. He used to do window rehab it was his business. And he still teaches workshops for me a lot. So you reattach the weight, and you tie a knot, and there's this little opening on the side of the window where the knot is supposed to be, and it's really not that hard. Do not glue the knot into place. Do not glue the knot. You can hold it in place with a little nail or a little screw, but do not glue it, because you want to leave this so that the next people that come along in another quarter century can do this without having to use modern curse words from 2050. Okay, then you reinstall the sash. You reattach the ropes, it goes right into the position, and you put the stop back on the inside, and voila, you are done. Also, getting the hardware all cleaned up and everything else. And it's a very simple operation. Always, like I said, always replace both sets of ropes. Weather stripping should be installed. While you've got it all apart, install the weather stripping. It's really easy. And remember that if the upper sash is painted shut, you're not losing air through there. So if the putty's in good shape and you don't really have time to do the whole window, maybe just do the bottom one. When my husband gets here to the end of this, I have these handouts. This is also available for me from the email address I'm going to give you later. This is a really simple handout that goes through all the steps of replacing sash ropes. I don't cover the putty replacement in this, but it does go into the sash ropes. The only difference is that when you take it apart, you go ahead and do the putty replacement, and then you put the ropes back on. So this is the video you can get on YouTube, and it's really, really good. So the cost to do windows yourself, if you're doing it yourself, glazing compound, sash rope, brand new, and I recommend brand new. The sash rope that I like the best, it should be cotton. I don't care what it's labeled at Lowe's or Menards or Home Depot, but if it's not a cotton sash rope, a synthetic core is okay, but it should be cotton on the outside. If it's labeled sash rope and it's like a polyester plastic sort of, no. Because if it stretches too much, then the window won't open all the way. And that's the problem with some of the synthetics, they stretch too much. So you want the cotton sash rope. My favorite is called Samson Red Spot. And it's a number 7 or number 8 is what you need for most windows. Not all, but most. It comes up to number 32. They use it in like rigging stages as well. But the Samson is the, that's the stuff that I like the best. So you get the weather stripping, the rope, glazing compound, and then cost is probably going to be, I mean, everything for your window, even if you break the glass, you're probably going to have a hard time cracking $25. You know, seriously, and you have to have new glass put in. And the points that you need to hold the glass, it's not going to cost much. The cheapest replacement window you can get, you know, the fire sale, buy one, get one free windows, you're talking about $150. And that doesn't include all their add-ons like taxes, disposal fees, lead paint, hazard, and all that kind of stuff. And it's a 12-year warranty. So really repairing, and there are more and more people all over the United States, and I know there are at least some here in Minnesota, that actually do window rehab. That can actually come in and rehab the windows for you. And you don't have to do them all at once. I mean, you can place the windows all at once, but there's no reason you can't say, okay, we're going to do the living room windows this year, dining room windows next year. There's no reason it has to be done all at once. So it's not that, now, this is my favorite thing to do. I love doing this. To get the metal, to get the paint off any sort of hardware, all you need is a crock pot or an old frying pan, an old electric frying pan. I like a crock pot because I leave it on warm overnight. In the morning, the paint peels off just like a Band-Aid. Especially if it's really thick. Don't use chemical strippers because they may change the color of the underlying metal. But get that paint off of there. But it's really, and don't ever use it to cook in, ever again, ever. This is nasty, hazardous, yeah. This is the one place where I do tend to use gloves if I have any open cuts or anything, because this can be, well, not only the fact that you're dealing with boiling water, but there's also the fact that there is lead in the water and everything else, so. But it's really neat, and then you can get the last steel wool to get the last of the paint off. If you need to get paint out of little cracks and crevices because it's a really fancy piece, use something wooden or plastic. Don't use metal because it'll scratch the metal. If you have a wire wheel, sometimes you can just whiz it all off again. Get the last little bits off out of the details, and that works really well. And then I like to just, some people like to paint it at that point, or they put a clear coating on it. I like to just rub it with some linseed oil, and it looks beautiful, and that protects it from rust. And it looks absolutely gorgeous. But don't ever cook in it again.
What do you do with the water?
Flush it down the toilet. Seriously, you know, I might then double flush afterwards so that you've got whatever you splashed is gone. But, and again, we're going to talk a little bit about lead, but yeah, oddly enough, you'd say, well, what am I going to do it? Well, you can just flush it down the toilet. We flush worse things down the toilet pretty regularly. Okay, so then your third thing that people will frequently bring up, well, I have to replace all my windows, there's lead. Oh my God, there's lead there. It's like, well, yeah. They put the lead in paint for a reason, okay? It made it last longer. It's a natural microbicide, so it kills mold and stuff more easily. You're more commonly going to find lead paint in bathrooms and kitchens in older houses because it deals with the moisture better, okay? Lead is never found in true black paint because if it's black like you find on old storm windows or old screens, there's probably no lead in it because lead automatically makes the paint a little bit lighter. So if it's a true black old paint, there's probably not any lead in it. And this is the little graph at the bottom is, you know, it shows that any house built before 1940, 87% of them probably have significant amounts of lead paint on them or in them. So this is why the current federal law assumes that houses built before 1978 when lead was outlawed in paint, assumes that there probably is lead paint present, unless proven otherwise. So the assumption is there's lead paint present. And while you can go through the whole process of testing, it really is a lot easier just to act as if there's lead paint present. It'll just mean that you're working neatly and you're cleaning up after yourself and you're keeping kids and dogs and pets out of the room. Okay, so this is the lead paint. This is actual marketing merchandise that was put out by the lead paint industry in the 1930s. These were coloring books they would give to kids And I love the fact that the prize for the school teacher that gave out the most was a bowl for the teacher's desk made of lead filled with chocolates. Yep, so let's just, lead paint poisoning is serious. I mean, when I first found out about how the federal government, the EPA, and HUD were treating lead and that they essentially were destroying older houses in order to get rid of lead paint, I was just really angry. And then I learned a lot more about it. Yes, it really is dangerous. It can do horrific things. You've all been following, I'm sure, to a greater or lesser degree, what's been happening in Flint. That's actually looking really good. The level of contamination they're concerned about with kids is the level of, if they have blood lead level above 5, they start being concerned about the kids and want to watch them. Above 10, they get very concerned. Well, the kids in Flint who doubled their blood lead levels, most of them went from 2 to 4. So they were still below the level of serious concern, but something needed to be done. The fact that they were raising that quickly was a sign that something was badly wrong. So I'm not worried about the kids of Flint in the long run. That what they proposed to remediate it is good, but you know, it really is an issue. But there are ways to keep kids and parents and pets safe from lead hazard without replacing windows, and I'm going to go into that. Lead in dust is the #1 exposure. It's lead dust. It's not. You see, every time you see an article, it seems like, about lead paint, you see some picture of a little kid picking up a piece of chip paint off a porch floor or out of the window well of a window, and it's like, oh my goodness, the child is eating the, no. The vast majority of kids that are lead poisoned, it's dust in the air from windows opening and closing, the friction surfaces, doors opening and closing, and putting dust into the air, or poorly maintained paint anywhere in the house so that the dust gets into the air. And then you get a kid, you open doors, windows opening and closing, the lead dust is on the floor, the 8-month-old is crawling around on the floor, petting the cat and dog who have been laying on the floor, and then eating their Cheerios with their hands. That's how it gets inside. Ingestion is the most common pathway for lead to get inside your body, which means somehow you eat it or you inhale it. It cannot be absorbed through your skin unless you have an open wound. Okay, so just the idea of being really sweaty and getting lead dust all over you, that's probably not going to do it. Smoking, however, is a very efficient way to deliver lead dust directly into your lungs. So ingestion is the most common pathway. I wanted to put this chart up to show that since 1976, the amount of blood lead levels, people with elevated blood lead levels, has gone down something well over 90%. So what we're doing is already on the right track, but we don't want any of the next generation to get exposed either. So this is a lead-based paint hazard. As the friction, the windows open and close, window wells like this are not an unusual place to find chips of paint, or even very sure, if there's little chips, there's probably a very fine layer of dust that you can't see. So it just needs to be, what's the solution to this window well? 2 really simple things. Clean it up really good with damp paper towels, wet paper towels that you discard in the regular trash after that. And then once it's dry, paint it. Because the lead may still be there in the wood, but it is no longer a hazard. So all of these are, there could be lead paint hazard here. Probably not so much in the upper left and the lower right windows, because those are varnished windows. But the other ones, yeah, there's probably a lead paint hazard there that needs to be addressed. But this is also a deterioration issue, not just lead paint. And then that lower left picture, you've also got transite, which is a cement asbestos siding. Again, not dangerous if it's intact. If you get people freaking about asbestos, remind them that what we're concerned about is friable asbestos. And that, by definition, is an asbestos material that you can reduce to a powder with the pressure of a human thumb and forefinger. Okay? In other words, this stuff, when it's sound, is no danger to anyone at all. If you crush it, it could be really bad for people to breathe it in. But the way it is right now, intact and painted, it's as safe as any other material that's on the market. Except maybe vinyl. Okay, so yes, we're going to start with the given that lead is a dangerous neurotoxin, much as we regret it. children under 6 can have permanent cognitive and behavioral changes, even if their blood lead level, let's say you have a child whose blood lead level goes up to above 25, and it only stays there for a few weeks, then it goes back down again. Whatever part of their development was going on during that time period that's related to their neurological system could be affected. There's some kids who have been exposed to a really high level of lead when their speech centers were developing, and they really have a very, it's not that they're mute, but they have a hard time processing the thoughts in their head to words. They have a very hard time communicating. So the kid's blood lead level average may be lower, but a big spike can be a real hazard for a small child because they're developing. And because girls and boys, but girls especially, will actually integrate the lead into their bones as they grow, which means that when that young lady gets pregnant as a young mother, she may actually infuse her new baby with lead from her own bones. So it really, really is important. But this is another thing to keep in mind though, is that lead paint may be present, but it does not always equal to being a lead paint hazard. Okay? Present is not necessarily a hazard. When you drive your car, there are several poisonous materials in that automobile that should you somehow get them inside your body, you would be spending a lot of time in the ER and the ICU. Gasoline, antifreeze, transmission fluid. I mean, but where they are, where they belong, they're perfectly safe. And being disposed of properly, they're perfectly safe. It's when they get inside the human body they cause a problem. So there's ways to stop that. There are always restoration options. You can reduce and control the lead hazards. It does not necessarily mean that you're removing them all. You may just be painting them. The least invasive treatment should always be considered first. Historic preservation does not need to be a stumbling block to providing lead-safe housing, and controlling the lead hazards is possible without destroying the resource. You just have to find the balance. In other words, there is one easy answer, and that's take it all out and throw it away. But a real answer that preserves the historic resources is also very possible in the vast majority of cases, and it's just going to be a matter of doing a little bit more work to try to figure this out. By the way, this list came from the person who at the time was the head of the lead paint hazard program for the state of Michigan. And he put this slideshow, part of the slideshow together, talking about how can we find the balance between keeping the historic housing stock that we have and keeping kids safe, and it's there. So windows are considered a character-defining feature of any house, okay, of any old house. But it's also could be the primary source of lead dust and directly related to an EBL, elevated blood lead level. Elevated blood level. Okay, in New York State in 2006 to 2007, this is some data, the EBL levels of only 14% of the children that were diagnosed with high blood lead levels were related to rehab activities. Only 14%. The rest were getting the lead from somewhere else. Water, food, candy, other places that they could have been getting it from, but only 14% were related to rehab activities. In fact, 45% of the kids that are burdened with an elevated blood lead level comes from mom and dad doing the work on their own house and not taking proper caution. So it's not just contractors doing it, and it's the environment, but sometimes they'll just get enthusiastic and they'll do everything they can, and they want to do all the work themselves on their house, they don't realize they're poisoning their kids. So there are renovation options. Replace is the most expensive. Tear it all out, throw it away, and replace it. It's the most expensive, but it is quick, and there are entire industries devoted to doing it, just as there are for replacement windows. Repair, sometimes you can't repair it, but sometimes, may not be possible, but often it is possible most of the time. And one of the things that I like is jam liners. I think they're a little bit ugly, but if it means we're saving the window, it's not that bad. So the first thing you do is you test, is there lead paint present? On the market has several lead paint test kits. They're not cheap. It'll be about $20 for 5 swabs. But you can tell whether you have lead paint present for sure in your house. Now, if you bought a house and you can see that some of the woodwork has been stripped and it's been revarnished, and you see others and you say it's been painted, is that still the old lead paint under there? It might be worth testing, or you could just go on the assumption that the lead paint is probably there and just move forward. But it's worth testing. Sometimes these test things don't work too well on red paint because they show up pink. So it may not actually be a true sample if the paint happens to be red. Working lead safe is not that hard. You define the work area. We're gonna just work in this one room, take out the 3 windows today. You can make a kind of an airlock sort of that keeps the dust in the room. What this is on the inside, so on the side of the room where my brother is actually, where he's peeking through from the other side, is a single piece of visqueen that has been taped to all 4 edges of the door frame, and then a slit down the middle that's reinforced with duct tape. And then on the other side is a curtain of plastic that's laying over it. And this is a very inexpensive way. If you have a door works well too. But if you're gonna have to open and close the door, that's gonna create wind currents, they're gonna take stuff out. So I'd still put one of these on one side or the other of the door just to be sure that you're not getting lead out into the rest of the room. Keep kids and pets out. Keep them both out. But the pet, because, you know, your little spaniel comes in and licks his hand while he's working, you know, while they're getting the lead dust is all over the place, then he goes back out and wrestles with the baby, okay? No, you don't want that. So keep the pets out. And pets can also be affected. In fact, in some of the worst cases of lead poisoning, the pets have been the canaries in the coal mine, and they've shown the effects before the kids did, is obviously. And so it was actually the veterinarian that pointed out that the parents were doing the wrong thing when they were rehabbing their house. You work wet when you're working with lead paint because you don't want to make dust. So if you're going to sand or you're going to scrape, you just spray with a little bit of water first, and then you work and you wipe down your surfaces with disposable cloths, and they can be real cloth if you have rags, or they can be paper towels. If you do use real rags, don't reuse them and wash them and say, I can reuse these, because now you're contaminating your washer, your laundry room. Just throw them away. But if you've got old nasty rags you're going to do that with anyway, go ahead and use rags. But they should be disposable. Whatever you're using should be disposable. You can wear masks if you want. She wore masks and gloves the whole time, all 3 days of the workshop. The other guy didn't, you know. She actually had a baby at home, which I think might have been part of why she was doing it. But you want to have some kind of disposable floor covering to catch the chips and the dust. You can just see it in this picture. Right here, you can see the tape where they've actually got the floor, the plastic on the floor is there, and then they've taped it about, you know, so to catch all the things that are coming, and it won't end up, you know, with lead dust on the top of the wood trim around the room. And then you just walk on that when you're done. You just roll it up and throw it away in the regular trash. You can also use, you know, a heat gun, as we did in the previous one, to repair the window. Get all that paint off with a heat gun, and just get rid of all the paint. Your window's going to operate better, and it's going to get rid of the lead hazard. It's really a good idea. Kids will only shed, they won't shed as much of the lead that's in their bodies, because by the time you get to the point where, you know, the lead, they're not being exposed anymore, they've integrated it into growing tissue. Adults will shed 98% of the lead that goes into their bodies. Okay, so if you can have an elevated blood lead level for an adult, they're probably going to be back down to normal fairly quickly. A kid may never get back down to totally low again. Yeah?
When you heat lead paint, are you releasing, is the vapor as bad as the dust?
Yes. That's why you use the speed heater, because it goes only up to 600 degrees, which is less than the temperature that it takes to turn lead into a gas. And if you're using a heat gun, you should keep it below 600 degrees as well.
So, is she using the gun?
She's using the gun, right. She's using the gun.
The speed heater looks like a Kleenex box.
It does, yeah. It's about the size of a loaf of bread with a handle on it, you know. Okay, so you want to just strip the paint, recoat the sills, repaint all the trim, and then you can add in sash tracks that actually cover the track and serve as the spring. You will be possibly getting rid of the ropes in this process as well. But you'll have the sash tracks that actually will allow the house to, if it were being tested, to actually pass a test that the work had been done properly. I don't think I have any. You can see the tracks here. Okay, they're right. This is the shiny metal sash tracks. So it goes right in, it serves as the parting bead between the upper and lower sash. They can still both operate. They couple Window Renew, which is Window RENU, actually has a product that's pretty reasonably priced. There are other ones and they just go in and they hold, the original sash goes back into them, and then you put it back in the frame, and from the outside, the only way you can tell is there's a slightly shiny surface on the sash tracks. Yeah?
Like I've seen sash tracks where they have springs in them and they eliminate the...
Yep, they do have those. And some people put them in for that reason, but they're also a really good solution for lead remediation because you have gotten rid of the friction surface. So even if, because no matter what you do, there's still going to be, after you've stripped all the paint off, there's still going to be a little teeny bit of lead in that wood that penetrated. There's going to be some. Paint back in the 1880s, 1890s was not unusually 50% lead by weight. There's going to be lead in the wood. So it could still, as the window opens and closes, still shed just a little teeny bit of lead. You got these sash tracks in, it's not happening. So, okay, so these are the owner's issues that we had. We talked about energy cost and the fact that window replacement is the least effective way to save money on energy. 4 inches of insulation in your attic or new curtains and blinds will save you more money than replacing your windows. So, really, energy is not going to be a big issue. Operation, the rehab can be do-it-yourself, or there are lots of people nationwide that are doing this kind of work. When I first got interested in windows, back when I bought my house with the pool that has the vinyl windows, I bought it because I wanted the pool, not the vinyl windows. I think there was one business person in Western Michigan doing that kind of work. Now, there's probably 10 to 15 people doing that kind of work, either as an exclusive business or as part of what they offer as contractors that know how to rehab windows. Part of this is the workshops that we've done, but part of it is also, it's just something that people want to do and get into. It's something you can get into as a small business. If you've just got a reliable vehicle and some tools, you can actually go into people's homes and do a lot of this work. My son, before he joined the Army, was, I taught him how to replace sash ropes, and he was working with landlords in Kalamazoo because they have to have their windows operable. And so he would just go in and replace sash ropes, and it was this little business for him like mowing lawns, that he could go in and replace sash ropes and get the windows working again for the landlords. They didn't care about the rest of the window, they just needed to pass their rental housing inspection. So operation can be resolved, and it doesn't have to be a new window to resolve it. Lead hazard, oh my goodness, and you may get confronted by a lead remediation program that says the only thing that we're allowed to do is replace windows. And that is not true. I did not bring the stuff with me, but there's actually a really huge and purposeful loophole in that law that says, no, you can strip the windows and you can put the sash packs in, or the sash tracks in, and that will be considered remediation. The key thing is that it's super easy to pass. If you're using federal money, you have to remediate lead. Okay, if you're spending over a certain threshold of money, you have to get rid of the lead. And you have to have a test at the beginning. Where is the lead? What's been done? You know, where do we have to be concerned? And then you have to pass a clearance at the end that says the lead is gone. Okay? If you can't, and they know that if they do a complete replacement, they're going to pass that end clearance. But if they don't do complete tear-out abatement, then they may not pass their clearance at the end. If they do it right, they will. But that's what they're concerned about, especially the nonprofits and stuff and the health programs that are doing lead remediation. They're concerned about passing that clearance test at the end. But it can be done, and there's techniques to do it nationwide, and it is allowed for, especially in historic districts. Sometimes replacement windows are the only choice, depending on the condition of the existing window. Okay, I mean, they're really, really bad. Okay, I'm sorry. I transplanted a little bit too much here. Sometimes you can do a replacement window. Then that might really be the only choice that is going to be the right remediation for that house. Okay? But then, do you need to do the whole thing, or do you need all of it? Visually, it should match. These are some of the companies. There, I've got Jim up there. Monterey does storm windows up here in Minnesota. These were people I got from the list of the Window Preservation Alliance. You can go to their website and find out if there are people working in your area.